You scroll through your feed and you see them, all of them, posting their lives like it is a performance they have rehearsed. The vacation photos with captions about gratitude and living in the moment. The humble brags disguised as inspirational updates. The carefully curated images that show just enough vulnerability to seem authentic, but not enough to actually be real. The motivational quotes, the political hot takes, the constant stream of look at me, validate me, tell me I exist. And you just watch. You scroll in silence. You have not posted in weeks, maybe months. Your profile picture is probably years old. Your last update was so long ago, you barely remember what it said. People who know you in real life might wonder if you even have social media anymore. And the truth is, you barely do. Not in the way everyone else seems to, because something in you cannot do it, cannot perform that way, cannot package your life into digestible content for consumption, cannot reduce your thoughts to sound bites that will get likes, cannot participate in the endless competition for attention and validation that social media has become. And maybe you have told yourself stories about why. Maybe you say you are too busy, too private, too mature for that kind of thing. Maybe you say you do not care about social media, that it is shallow and meaningless and beneath you. But if you are honest, really honest, it is not that simple. There is something deeper happening. Something about your silence that reveals more about your inner world than any post ever could. The truth is, your silence is not neutral. It is not just an absence of noise. It is a presence, a statement, a psychological pattern that says something profound about how your mind works, about what you fear, about what you are protecting. And most of the time, you do not even fully understand it yourself. You just know that when you think about posting something, anything, there is this immediate resistance. This voice that starts analyzing and questioning and dismantling whatever you are about to share. This sense that anything you could say would be inadequate, performative, misunderstood. This feeling that putting yourself out there, even in the smallest way, would be exposing something you need to keep hidden. So you stay silent. You watch from the shadows. You consume without creating. You observe without participating. And the longer the silence goes on, the heavier it becomes, the harder it is to break, until your silence becomes part of your identity, until you are the person who does not post, the person who is above it all, the person who watches while everyone else performs. But underneath that identity, underneath the story you tell yourself about why you stay silent, there is something else. Something Freud would recognize immediately. Something about shame and fear and the unbearable weight of being seen. Here is what your silence is really about. It is about the gap between who you are and who you think you should be. Freud spent his life exploring the structure of the psyche, and one of his most important discoveries was this. We do not live as unified selves. We live as fragmented selves. We have the id, the raw, instinctual part that wants what it wants without concern for consequences. We have the ego, the part that tries to navigate reality and make choices that will keep us safe and functional. And we have the superego, the internalized voice of judgment, of morality, of impossible standards. For most people, social media becomes a place where the ego tries to present an acceptable version of the self. A version that the superego can tolerate. A version that will get approval from others and maintain the illusion that we are who we are supposed to be. But for you, your superego is too strong, too critical, too exacting. When you think about posting, your superego immediately starts its assault. That is not interesting enough. That is not clever enough. That is not deep enough. People will judge you for that. People will see through that. That is not really you. That is just you trying to look good. And under that level of scrutiny, nothing survives. Every potential post gets dismantled before it even makes it out of your mind. Because your superego has set a standard that is impossible to meet. a standard that demands total authenticity while also demanding total acceptability. And those two things cannot coexist. You cannot be completely authentic and completely acceptable at the same time. So you stay silent. Because silence is the only thing your superego cannot criticize. Silence does not expose you to judgment. Silence does not risk being seen as trying too hard or not trying enough. Silence keeps you safe from the possibility that someone might see the real you and find you lacking. But here is what makes it complicated. Your silence is not just about protecting yourself from others. It is about protecting yourself from yourself, from seeing yourself reflected back in a way that confirms your deepest fears. Freud talked about the mirror stage, the moment when a child first recognizes themselves in a mirror and realizes they are a separate being, an object that can be seen by others. And that moment is both thrilling and terrifying. Because once you know you can be seen, you start to worry about how you are seen. You start to construct a self that is acceptable for public viewing. But what happens when that constructed self feels false? What happens when the gap between your private self and your public self becomes so wide that any attempt to bridge it feels like a lie? That is where your silence comes from. You cannot post because posting requires you to choose a version of yourself to present. And every version feels wrong. Every version feels like a performance. Every version feels like it is betraying something essential about who you really are. So you withdraw. You refuse to play the game. You protect your inner world by keeping it completely private. And there is something noble about that. Something that feels like integrity. But there is also something tragic about it. Because your silence is not just protecting you, it is isolating you. If you are recognizing yourself in this, if this description is touching something you rarely let yourself examine, take a moment and like this video. Not for me, for you, as an acknowledgement that you see what is happening. Let me pause here for a moment because I need to ask you something that matters. Have you ever felt like you are living two lives at once? The one everyone sees, where you smile and function and pretend everything is fine, and the one inside your head, where you are struggling, confused, doubting every choice you make. That split, that exhausting performance of being okay when you are not, it is something Freud understood deeply. And I want you to know something. You are not broken. You are not weak. You are human. And what you are feeling right now, this exact struggle you are carrying, someone else watching this video is feeling it too. They are sitting there thinking they are the only one, just like you might be thinking right now. So I am going to ask you to do something that might feel vulnerable, but it is important. Go down to the comments right now and type this exact phrase. I feel this. Just those 3 words. I feel this. You do not need to explain. You do not need to write your whole story. Just let those words be your voice today. Because when you do that, something powerful happens. The person scrolling through these comments, the one who feels completely alone in their pain, they are going to see your comment. And for the first time in maybe days, weeks, or months, they are going to realize they are not alone either. Your 3 words might be the thing that helps them breathe a little easier tonight. This is not just about engagement. This is about connection. This is about breaking the silence that keeps us isolated in our suffering. Freud built his entire life's work on one simple truth. We heal when we speak what has been hidden. So speak it now. Go to the comments, type, I feel this, and know that by doing so, you are not just helping yourself. You are helping every single person who needs to know that what they feel is real, is valid, and is shared. Do it now. I will wait. There is another layer to your silence that we need to explore. It is not just about perfectionism or fear of judgment. It is about identity. Freud understood that we construct our sense of self through a process of identification and differentiation. We define ourselves partly by what we are and partly by what we are not. And in a culture saturated with social media, with constant performance and curation and personal branding, your silence becomes a way of saying, I am not that. I am not someone who needs validation from strangers. I am not someone who reduces their life to content. I am not someone who performs their existence for likes and comments. I am different. I am deeper. I am more authentic. And there is truth in that. You probably are more reflective than the average person scrolling and posting without thought. But here is the uncomfortable question. Is your silence really about authenticity? Or is it about superiority? Is it really about protecting your inner world? Or is it about maintaining a sense of being above the fray, untouched by the desperate need for attention that everyone else seems to have? Because if you are honest, really honest, there is probably some of both. There is probably a part of you that genuinely cannot participate because it feels false. And there is probably another part of you that enjoys feeling different, that takes a certain pride in your refusal to play the game, that uses your silence as evidence that you are more evolved than all those people posting their breakfast and their feelings and their opinions. And that second part, that is your ego defending itself. That is your psyche finding a way to turn your wound into a weapon. Your inability to post becomes proof of your superiority. Your silence becomes a badge of honor. And as long as you can maintain that story, you do not have to face the more painful truth underneath, which is that you are not silent because you are above social media. You are silent because you are afraid. Afraid of being seen and found wanting. Afraid of putting yourself out there and being ignored. Afraid of trying to connect and discovering that nobody cares. But what does your silence cost you? Freud would say you are losing the opportunity for connection. Real connection. Not the shallow validation of likes and comments, but the deeper recognition that comes when you express something true and someone else responds with, yes, I feel that too. You are losing the chance to discover that you are not as alone as you think you are. That other people struggle with the same thoughts, the same doubts, the same existential confusion. You are losing the experience of being seen and discovering that being seen does not destroy you. That you can be visible and still be safe. That you can share something real and still be accepted. Because right now, your silence is based on an assumption. The assumption that if people really saw you, they would reject you. That if you showed up authentically, you would be too much or not enough. That the real you is not acceptable. But you have never tested that assumption. You have never given people the chance to prove it wrong. You have just decided in advance that it is safer to stay hidden. And maybe you are right. Maybe if you showed up fully, some people would not understand. Some people would judge. But some people would not. Some people would recognize something in your words that speaks to their own experience. Some people would feel less alone because you were brave enough to be visible. But you will never know. As long as you stay silent, you will never know. You already know this, but we're not ready to understand ourselves alone. The human mind is vast, complex, and often frightening to explore without guidance. If this content is helping you see yourself more clearly, if these insights about Freud's work are bringing light to parts of yourself you've kept hidden, then consider subscribing to this channel. This is not just another psychology channel. This is a space where we explore the depths of human nature together, where we take the most profound concepts from psychoanalysis and make them accessible, practical, and deeply personal. Every video here is designed to help you understand not just theory, but yourself, your patterns, your fears, your desires, the invisible forces that have been shaping your choices without your awareness. When you subscribe, you are making a commitment to yourself. You are saying that you are ready to look deeper, to understand more, to stop running from the truth of who you are. And I promise you this, I will be here every week bringing you insights that matter, explanations that actually make sense, and perspectives that can genuinely change how you see yourself and the world around you. This journey of self-understanding is not easy. Freud knew this. He spent his entire life mapping the human psyche precisely because he understood how lost we can feel inside our own minds. But you do not have to walk this path alone. Hit that subscribe button. Turn on notifications. Become part of a community of people who have decided that understanding themselves is worth the discomfort, worth the effort, worth the time. Because at the end of the day, the most important relationship you will ever have is the one with yourself. And that relationship deserves your attention, your curiosity, and your courage. So subscribe now, and let's continue this exploration together. Your future self will thank you for taking this step today. So what would Freud tell you to do about your silence? He would start by asking you to examine what your silence is protecting you from. What is the fear underneath the fear? What is the wound that your silence is trying to keep from being exposed? Because once you understand that, once you can name it clearly, it loses some of its power over you. Maybe your silence is protecting you from the memory of a time when you were visible and it went badly. When you shared something and it was mocked or dismissed or ignored. When you were vulnerable and it was used against you. When you tried to connect and you were rejected. And now your psyche has learned that visibility equals danger, that sharing equals pain, that silence is the only way to stay safe. If that is true, then your silence is a defense mechanism. And Freud would say that defense mechanisms exist for a reason. They protect us when we need protection, but they also outlive their usefulness. They keep protecting us from dangers that no longer exist. They keep us small and hidden, even when we have outgrown the need for that level of protection. So the work is not to force yourself to be visible. The work is to understand why visibility feels dangerous. To recognize that you are not that vulnerable person anymore. That you have resources now that you did not have then. That you can survive being seen. That you can handle rejection or judgment or misunderstanding without it destroying you. Here is what I think your silence is really revealing. It is revealing a psyche that is incredibly rich and complex and thoughtful. A mind that processes things deeply, that questions everything, that cannot settle for surface-level interaction. Your silence is not evidence of emptiness. It is evidence of fullness. You are so full of thoughts and feelings and observations that you do not know how to compress them into the tiny boxes that social media offers. You are so aware of nuance and complexity that the simplified, performative nature of online interaction feels like a betrayal of everything you actually think and feel. So you withdraw. You protect the integrity of your inner world by keeping it entirely private. And there is something beautiful about that. Something that refuses to be diminished or commodified or reduced to content. But there is also something sad about it, because your inner world, as rich as it is meant to be shared. Not all of it, not indiscriminately, but some of it, in ways that feel authentic to you, with people who can receive it. Because connection is not just a nice thing to have, it is a psychological necessity. We are not built to live entirely in our own heads. We are built to be in relationship, to exchange ideas and feelings and experiences, to see and be seen. And your silence, no matter how justified it feels, is keeping you from that. So what would it look like to break your silence? Not by becoming someone you are not by starting to post motivational quotes or vacation photos or any of the things you find meaningless, but by finding a way to let something real out. Something small. Something that actually reflects who you are. Maybe it is a thought you have been sitting with. Maybe it is a question you wish someone would ask. Maybe it is an observation about something you noticed. It does not have to be perfect. It does not have to be profound. It just has to be true. And it has to be expressed. Because the act of expression itself is what breaks the pattern. The act of making yourself visible, even in a small way, even in a way that feels uncomfortable, that is what teaches your psyche that visibility is survivable. That being seen does not destroy you. That you can put something of yourself out into the world and still be okay. And maybe nobody responds. Maybe it gets ignored. And that will hurt. But you will survive it. And maybe someone does respond. Maybe someone says, yes, I think about that too. Maybe someone recognizes something in your words that makes them feel less alone. And that is the whole point. That is why we express ourselves. Not for the validation, not for the likes, but for the possibility of connection. Here is what I want you to sit with as we close. Your silence is not serving you anymore. Whatever it used to protect you from, whatever danger it helped you avoid, you have outgrown it. You are not that person anymore. You are not as fragile as you think you are. You are not as unworthy as your superego tells you you are. You are someone with thoughts that matter, with feelings that are valid, with experiences that are worth sharing. And the world does not know any of that because you have kept it hidden. You have kept yourself hidden. And I understand why. I understand the fear. I understand the perfectionism. I understand the sense that anything you could say would be inadequate. But what if inadequate is okay? What if imperfect is actually more real than anything polished? What if the messy, uncertain, questioning version of yourself is exactly what someone else needs to see? What if your silence is not protecting your authenticity, but preventing it? Because authenticity requires expression. It requires risk. It requires the willingness to be seen even when being seen is uncomfortable. So here's my question for you. What is one true thing you could express today? What is one thought or feeling or observation that actually reflects who you are? And what would it take for you to let that out? Not on social media if that does not feel right, but somewhere, in a conversation, in a journal that you share with one trusted person, in a comment on this video, somewhere. Because the silence is not neutral. The silence is a choice. And maybe it is time to choose differently. Share this video with someone who also stays silent. Someone who watches from the shadows. Someone who needs permission to finally speak. And let them know they are not alone. That their silence makes sense. But that maybe, just maybe, it is time to try something different. Thank you for being here. Thank you for listening. Thank you for letting me see you, even if nobody else does yet. You matter. Your thoughts matter. Your voice matters. Even if you do not believe that yet. Especially if you do not believe that yet.